Hello, I'm Mark London.
I'm Elmer Beard, and we are two Southern conservatives in conversation. I believe that's it.
Might be okay. Let's try that one.
So I wanted to talk about recent experience last Sunday. Today is the following Sunday. I was here last Sunday for, let's see, 11
11
like
to
6 hours
at least 11 to 5. It's about 6 hours.
That's right. Yeah. And I was in the church. We're actually in the church director's
boardroom. Right.
Yeah. And the church is right outside the door down the hallway. And
we call that the sanctuary part for the time being.
Okay. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what it was like for me. I felt very privileged and honored to be here because I really have this strong sense of how much history is here in this building and how much people work to achieve this really nice church that you guys have.
The present site that we have.
Yeah. And having gained a little awareness, the occasion of last Sunday's service was the
157th church anniversary,
right.
The fourth Sunday in February.
So think about 1868 in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Recently, a few years prior to the church being established, this was a solid red slave state. You know, people were enslaved. And so the people that started this church had that experience of being recently freed only 3 years prior, and who knows what their lives were like.
That's exactly the history of it to that extent. I do understand from what I'm told that there had been some plans for a church years earlier prior to the Emancipation Proclamation, but those plans would fade as people would come and go, and they at that time would be used to just survive and move from one side of a mountain or hillside to another. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, over a period of about 3 years, after people had met in various homes coming out of slavery, there was someone from Roanoke, Virginia, who became one of the leaders of the founding of the church. And the place of establishment was across the creek from 315 Whittington Avenue, where Roanoke Baptist Church was founded in their Brush Harbor.
That's in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
That's in Hot Springs, Arkansas, right here from where we are speaking now. One block, I suppose it's east of there. Yes, east of where we were found. That's the beginning of our church.
So Elmer and his fellow, other ministers from surrounding churches came over for that last Sunday celebration, and we became aware at that time. One of the ministers from the Malvern Church said that church was established in 1859.
His church in Malvern was older than ours, and the one who found his church in Malvern also was one of the founders of the Roanoke Baptist Church in Hot Springs. And we were blessed to hear the truth about our church not being the oldest in the state, but one of the oldest. And the same minister who helped to find our church was the founder of his church, the minister that spoke here.
And to me, it's quite a tribute to perseverance and just a tremendous amount of I don't even know what to say, but just the capacity of the people who started it in 1868 here, this church. But then to think back about the folks in 1859, which was prior to the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, they would have had to start that church with, I don't know, their slave master?
The slave master would have had to give them permission.
Right.
Where
would they get money for that?
Well, money wasn't a word that they could use in. It was probably pennies. And the sources, the physical labor The
Hmm.
establishing of a church would involve some rocks and some boards, some trees, some limbs, some posts, some kind of physical material. And as they built the structure, it wasn't to be used during inclement weather as such.
Mm. It wasn't
They
waterproof
It wasn't
necessarily.
waterproof in 1859 or in 1862 or in 1868. They did what they could with what they had, and they assembled there. And let me point out, while we have time to do so, there were no women involved in it at that time.
Mm.
And our particular church, the minister
Yeah.
couldn't read or write, but he could remember.
Oh,
The
wow.
clerk couldn't read or write, but he could remember. And when the minister would speak and the
Remarkable.
parishioners would come together and have their meetings on their church and what the name was going to be and how it was going to be built when they were able to build it, the secretary or the reader would take that message to his master or former slave master at a hotel downtown and repeat it to him exactly like he had heard it. The former master or boss downtown would record it and he would bring it back and pass it to the pastor who couldn't read, but they would keep it until they could find a reader, or if someone learned to read among them, that became the church history in
Wow.
the beginning. Remarkable story.
Wow. Just to think about the horrible injustice of that for me, I'm, I don't just, it's astonishing. I'm almost speechless by it because you're depriving people of the ability to actually read the scriptures that they believe in.
They had heard
They
it from the master.
and they've been inculcated with this information, and they've said, yes, I can do this. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I believe in God, and I believe in the Christian way, and even though they were subjected to unbelievably inhumane treatment and deprivation and all kinds of, I don't know, beatings, torture, all of that.
In the beginning, and it's my imagination as well of fact, the former slaves could make it on a meal a day. And coming over from Africa, it was a meal not every day, but as the masters found food or could provide food. If you ate on Monday, you didn't eat on Tuesday. You could make it into Wednesday. So the meals and the food rotated. And so the former slave was used to making it on a very little, on a minimum amount of food and rest and water. So by being found or beginning our church across the street, Water Street it is,
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't new to them. So they had the rocks, they had the stone, they had the brush, they had the trees and limbs, so they could begin with this harbor. And if it dried or fell, they could just rebuild it and keep it going until they could build the first one-room building. That was part of the physical part of our church. And we had members in the church. One particular family was named Bakers. They had a farm out Whitterton Avenue,
Mm.
and when they died, they had left the farm, FARM, of 156 of those 60 acres to Roanoke Baptist Church. Earlier, they had sold 6 acres, and they left the 154 acres, 154 is the exact number, to us, and we eventually had to sell it to pay for the church that we have now on the lease to our government organization for us to be able to get here. That's part of the beginning history of our church, and it's a great story. And these are only excerpts. We have been in existence since 1868. I remember when we celebrated our 100th church anniversary, we didn't have a church. We did it in the National Baptist Hotel of the on Malvern Avenue, which was a Baptist hotel at that time.
Wow. So this whole story, this saga of the origins and the continuation of this church through this time, just fills me with a great deal of admiration and respect for the perseverance, the strength, the courage,
That's the one word that's
the will
proper.
that people had to do this. I mean, I can't imagine myself being in that position and having that much uh, perseverance, strength, courage to carry on uh, under those conditions. And then on last Sunday, another thing that Elmer brought to my attention was that the original church, which was across the street here on Whittington Avenue in Hot Springs, Arkansas, that somebody actually
Bombed and
bombed
burned it.
and burned that.
At 4:45 a.m., this is December 22nd, 1963, and the fire department was about 3 blocks away. A fireman ran from the fire department on Whittington Avenue, true story, in his boots with an axe on his shoulder. And when he got to the church, he found a door open on the same side of the church as his department was, which was 3 blocks away. He found that the cushions from the church pews were piled in the center and were fused with a chemical to cause the blaze. And the church was in a blaze, and the heat was burning toward the door as he found it open. And that was the story that he passed on to the pastor, with the promise that the pastor of that church, Roanoke Baptist Church, James Donald Rice, pastor, 4:45 a.m., 1963, he promised Reverend Rice to never mention his name in the life of Reverend Rice. Reverend Rice and I was friends. Reverend Rice never told me his name, but he told me the story over and over again, and I have it in print. It was not safe for Reverend Rice to mention his name, but Reverend Rice didn't even tell the story until they went on the 35th church anniversary, when he had left and had come back from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and he shared the story with us. He simply said to the church, "It's now time to tell the truth about the burning and burning of the church."
Yeah.
After that length of time.
So what that story telegraphs to me is that the Reverend made a commitment to the firemen
that he would not give his name,
not to expose his knowledge of the bombing.
That is correct.
To the community, because that would have been very unsafe,
dangerous at that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're willing to bomb and burn the church, what's next?
That is correct.
You know,
we overcoming it. We feel that someone is in debt to us, and I like to tell this story over and over again at different times, and hopefully solicit some kind of support from someone who feels the same spirit that we felt then and that we feel now. We have forgiven that person, but it wasn't by our overheated stove, as the record showed for a while.
Overheated stove, yeah.
That wasn't an overheated stove. The stove hadn't been on since Thanksgiving. This was the 22nd of December, 1963. When I tell that story, I can laugh about it now, because we were limited as to how much freedom and how much information that we could honestly share about what happened at that time. So if those who are listening wondering if we have made some progress, we have. We are free to speak a little better now than we were at that time.
I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity to help tell your story and the people of this congregation's story.
Well, Mark, if you and I were not podcasters, we wouldn't be talking about this at this time. So that's a plug we can make also.
Oh yeah,
we're podcasters partners.
Yes, we are.
And
and we're happy to be together.
I made you a member of my church without being in the church, other than just the boardroom.
Yeah. And I think from previous podcasts, if you've watched this already, you have heard me say that I am an agnostic, and that I'm still welcome here in the church, and I feel very comfortable here. And even if we have different beliefs and different experiences, mine being a white kid in a white community raised in Napa, California.
And now you're a Southerner.
Yeah. But now I live in Hot Springs. That's what makes me a Southerner. So I'm just an honorary Southerner, not a native. But I'll take the mantle, because I'm really grateful to be here. It's surprising to me, having lived on the West Coast the rest of my life, in mostly California and somewhat in Oregon, and back to California and then to here. I found out what a great place Arkansas really is, and how incredibly warm and friendly very many of the people are here, like a large percentage, most of them. It's really amazing. So I'm happy about that.
I'm just happy that we have been able to reach out to each other and to communicate as well as we are, and share the kind of stories that probably are unbelievable to many people listen to us.
You're right. And we have granted ourselves the credentials of being conservatives because we
want to
are.
conserve history for one thing.
There
We
you
want to
go.
tell the truth.
History.
We get into conserving the right to vote, to speak,
Yes.
to differ with our faith or our religions. Or I shared with Mark minutes ago that to us, Christianity is not a religion. We call it the way of life, not a. And he and I can differ and have fun with this better than I can many other people who label themselves of the same faith that Mark does. We have more fun than if he was a fellow deacon friend of mine.
Cool. Yeah. And I want to point out one more thing in terms of the church history that was very saddening to me to learn and disappointing. And that is that this church originally, I think this edifice, this building that we're in, was actually built starting in 2017.
Right here.
2017.
Our interest here was in fall or late summer of 2017.
The story, as I recall, is that the church congregation had decided that they were finally ready. They had decided they could build on this spot. It turns out this piece of land was owned by the city of Hot Springs.
That's correct.
And that when they decided it was time to buy it, this piece of property had been vacant and unused for like 26 years.
It had been. That's what the record says.
26 years. Nobody had been interested in buying it. Nobody wanted to buy it. So the congregation got together and they hired somebody to do an appraisal on the property. And they found out, here's a value. So they approached the city with their offer based on that appraisal. And the city said, nah, I don't think so. Well, why? What's the problem? So anyway, to make a longer story shorter, the congregation was able to finally get the
funds,
but also the agreement from the city to
build on it.
Yes, and but at first to sell the property to them.
That's correct.
For twice the amount that the appraisal was.
Actually, at one point, 26 years earlier, it was 10,000, and prices go up. When we finally got around to the price to pay, it was 105, and we did that, and we continue to work. That's part of the price of freedom. I got a poem about that to share sometime. Mark, I hope you and I are enjoying this, and I hope you remember that I told you that after a certain length of time, I started thinking about how late is it? I'm going to need.
We're almost done. We only have 30 seconds or so left, but we'll continue because I want to make one more important addition to the story.
I want to hear this
about the 2017 building. So the congregation had their down payment ready and all of their financial records in order.
That is correct.
And they went to the bank, and the bank said, "Yeah, I'm so sorry.
We didn't need enough money." They said.
They said, "No." They told the parishioners here that I guess you were part of this, right?
I knew about it.
You knew about it.
Yes.
So they told them, "I'm sorry, your parishioners are too old."
That was the part that I forgot because I'm old. I forget that I'm old.
And so
Mark heard that point.
Yeah.
I forget that I'm old. Go ahead, Mark.
You're great, man. You're amazing. 87.
That's
going to
correct.
be 88 in a few days.
Oh boy.
So, anyway, the banker said, "I'm sorry," and he goes, "Well, you recognize that this church has been in business now for back then, what was it,
7 years, 150
years.
About then, yeah."
And he says, "I want to point out to you that the parishioners that were on the list from when the church started, they're all dead.
They're all gone. Generations of them are gone."
Point being that we have a set of parishioners who are aging, but we also get new parishioners all the time, and therefore we can continue to make the mortgage payment on the loan." And he said, and the banker said, "I'm sorry,
You can't do it.
But what had happened is he called a friend of his at another newer bank in town.
That is 100% true.
And they went ahead and financed the building.
That is the ending, which is a solid, blessed story. That's basically how it happened. Because we have the records.
What stands out for me is the obvious racial bias and prejudice in this story of white people in power not extending the same courtesy and consideration they would give to someone that looks like
This
me.
is why I can appreciate you so much for coming here and hearing this service on this day with this long hours, and I was becoming uncomfortable. I said, when is Mark going to make it? And Mark was more comfortable than I was because I was in and out. I said, Mark, all right? Mark was all right. I was the one not all right. And we were establishing a great relationship.
Yeah.
We got into church in 2017. Mark is here now. I hope he'll be in and out. Like I'll be in and out as long as we're around
Yeah.
and podcasters. We just
Yeah.
having a great time.
Elmer, I think the host is always much more nervous than the guest. You know,
I
that's,
believe
that's the
that's
way it
true.
works. Yeah.
I think that's the way it is about now too.
It's great podcasting with you. Over and out. We'll see you
Excellent.
next time, everybody.
We're going to have more of these.
Come back.
This was great. I'll let Mark talk more the next time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.